Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff here with Alex Dodd and Will Vandervoort. You may have seen our faces looking a little surprised for an extra second because I hit the buttons wrong.
We were on the cuff there for a second. We weren't off it. We were on it.
Oh, man. But we've got a full show for you today. We don't have any guests this week. Alex Turry's not going to be here to give his mortal locks, which we would really appreciate. He's actually had a pretty good week on the locks last week.
He did.
And then Kayla Abercrombie not going to be on the show either because she's got Parents Weekend this weekend in Clemson. So exciting stuff.
Yeah. Parents Weekend at Clemson should make for a good crowd, I think, in Death Valley on Saturday night with all the parents being in town and stuff. This is generally the nights when I like to go to Clemson because there's actually people my age there that I can converse with and have conversations.
Will can go to Tiger Town and not feel like a weirdo.
Yeah. Well, what you do is, besides these few weekends, you just avoid Clemson altogether when you get a certain age. And I'm at way past that certain age, and I just never go to Clemson, which I hate because I live 5 minutes from it. But it's for the college kids and it's for them to have fun and stuff like that, not for us adults. And so it's nice on weekends like this that my friends come into town to see their kids and stuff like that, and I actually get to go hang out with some people my own age and converse with, and that's nice instead of just having to stay home, if you will. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm sure the dogs are probably sick of you. They're ready for you to get out and go hang out with some people.
Absolutely, they are. They're like, hey, don't you got something to do on a Friday night? Why are you here, man? Get on out of here, But in all seriousness, though, it's good to have the parents in town, and it makes Clemson, to me, Parents Weekend is almost as good as homecoming. It makes Clemson really, really fun to be at on Parents Weekend.
Yeah, it's a good time to be down in Clemson. I'm a little far away to get back for Parents Weekend. I don't think I'm going to make it this weekend.
Well, you're only, like 1,500 miles or so away?
Something like that. Only about 24 hours away.
I mean, you could be here, a couple plane jumps here and there. And
if I start driving right now and I don't stop for longer than a couple hours, I probably can get to somebody's tailgate by Saturday afternoon. I just may be unemployed when I come back, so I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah, I don't think the folks at Rapid City Journal would like that if you just left them before a Friday night football game.
That wouldn't be good. I think the fans in town would probably be a little upset. But we got a lot of stuff we want to get to on the show today. We're going to talk about the Clemson-Charleston Southern game, what we saw in that game, what you saw, Will, from the press box, and what I saw watching it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about the latest top 25 rankings that do not include the Tigers.
What about that?
And we're also going to talk about, are Texas and Miami back? They're always talking about it. It seems like we hear it every year. Texas is back. Miami is back. But are they really back? Is this a new era in college football? And on that same line, we're going to try to figure out what's going on with Alabama. I know I have some theories. Will, I'm sure you have plenty of theories on that as well. And the SEC's tough start. And then we're going to preview Clemson and Florida Atlantic this weekend and do our pick six as usual. So a ton of stuff to get to. If you're tuning in live, we appreciate it. We're live on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And if you're popping in and have to pop out, this is going to be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you can find your podcasts by late tonight. So
and
you'll be able to tune back in.
And if you're on YouTube, please give us a like and comment below. We definitely would appreciate that. The more of you guys do that, the better it helps us. And so we appreciate you doing that as we're trying to get this podcast out there. And I think people enjoy it the more that see it. I know we've had some people that have complimented it, that have seen it, that enjoyed it. So, we just need to get a few more of y'all out there to start liking it and everything. And we can bring this to you. We're going to bring it to you regardless.
Yeah, I mean, nobody.
But we like for more people to watch it, of course, but we're going to bring it regardless because we have too much fun doing it. So talking football with Alex is always fun. And we're not going to do just football season. We're going to take it all the way through. And, we're going to talk every kind of sport. As you can see, Alex has got his stuff back there. You see behind me, we're not just football guys. We're sports guys, and we're going to talk everything. That's why the show's called Off the Cuff.
Yeah, we love it. We love talking sports. Sounds like Kevin's chiming in, trying to get on the podcast over there at Will's house.
Yeah, my brother walking in the door, just a yakking as we're doing the live podcast. That's always good.
Yeah, but we've started to pick up some more numbers on the the podcast listeners, that's for sure. I've seen the data on that. People are starting to tune in after the fact. We'd like to grow this live broadcast and make it great too. We're also looking for some sponsors. You see the stuff on the ticker, scrolling by with how to follow us on social media and everything else. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing, Will.
Let's do it.
Charleston Southern this weekend started out a little tense. I know there may have been a pillow or two from my couch that may be transported from one side of the room to the other with a couple turnovers in the first half. But the Tigers almost got a backdoor cover. I think the spread was like 50.5, and they were really close to getting it.
It was so funny because you send me that text message. You were like, oh, the Tigers might get a backdoor cover. And then right next to me, Cameron Burnett works with me at TCI. He says the exact same thing at the exact same time. I'm like, what are you guys reading each other's mind or something? I mean, it was crazy how you guys thought about that at the same time. But they came close. They came close to getting a backdoor cover. I was surprised there was even a line on this game, to be honest with you, Alex.
A lot of times you can't find lines for FCS, FBS matchups, but somebody was bored in Vegas, and I guess somebody else wanted to bet on the game, so there was a line, 50.5. And Clemson really close, 66-17 victory over Charleston Southern.
They would have covered it if it weren't for Cade Klubnik giving them Charleston Southern 14 points there.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to start. I was going to start with the defense, but let's start with the offense. It seemed like in the second half, you saw what you wanted to see from the Clemson offense. They turned on the Jets. They took advantage of opportunities. They scored 28 points in the third quarter. But at the beginning of the game, it's not like they didn't score points. I mean, they scored 24 points in the first half, but 2 turnovers that led to points for the Buccaneers. One of them a fumble down in the red zone and a pick six on a play where I think everybody in the stadium probably had a groan. I think I could actually hear it on TV, people groan at the decision just to throw up a prayer. But what did you see from the offense as a whole and kind of the way that they seem to settle in over the course of the game?
I mean, it was a good performance. It wasn't a great because you got to consider what happened at the start of the game when they had 2 straight possessions of, a fumble on 4th and 1 from their own 29, and the guy picks it up and runs it to the 1-yard line, and Charleston Southern needs 1 play to score 7 points, and all of a sudden it's 7-7. Then after an exchange of punts, which also resulted in, something Clemson needs to work on, Charleston Southern noticed it, is the onside kick in between. They got to make sure that don't happen against a Florida State or somebody. Mike Norvell, them, they probably saw that. That might have been the best thing to happen to Dabo and them, was that happened in that game. Now that's something they can work on and show this to their players. Like, hey, guys, you can't go running back every time on a kickoff. You need to make sure that ball's kicked deep and past you. So that's a good teachable moment right there. And it didn't hurt them at that point. They get the ball back. Defense gets a 3-and-out. They get the ball back and moving ball down the field. And, here's the part that Cade's got to be better at. He admitted after the game, he recognized the play wasn't going to work in pre-snap. He saw it in pre-snap. He's like, this ain't going to work. But he still allowed the play to happen. That's when he's got to call timeout. Especially in the first half, you're like, I got to call timeout and talk this over with the coaches. Because, he saw something, he knew it wasn't going to work, and he was right. Right? Yeah. And then, he's running for his life, and then he just tries to throw the ball out of bounds, which was the worst thing in the world. He should have just ate the sack, and he couldn't get enough on it. The guy picks it off and takes it to the house for a touchdown. And you're like, what in the world is going on here with this team? What are they doing? They do not look like any kind of ranked team at this point in time.
Yeah.
But then after
Charleston Southern, Charleston Southern, when the game was tied at 14, they had 0 yards of total offense at 14 points.
Yeah, Clemson had almost 200.
You can't let that happen. Where a team, you're giving them points, and that's the reality of the situation. It's not like the kid on the pick six made a great play and jumped a route, and that's one that you just got to chalk it up as the defense making a good play. You gifted an inferior opponent 14 points.
You gifted them 14 points, and you just can't do things like that and expect to win at a high level. And so the good news is it happened against Charleston Southern. I believe, I was talking to you earlier this week about this, I believe if Clemson had played Charleston Southern first and you make those kinds of mistakes in that game, you don't make the mistakes you made against Duke. Because I think you learn from it. And because you're going on the road to play a good Duke team, you can't do things like that. Clemson we all know starts off slow, a la Georgia in 2021, right? I mean, they just didn't look good. Last year against Georgia Tech in the first half, they struggled. But the thing is, they were playing Georgia Tech, and so they were an inferior opponent, able to overcome those struggles in the second half and dominate the game, much like they did last week. This year, they played Duke, who's a really good football team, on the road, and they make those same kind of mistakes, and it cost them. It cost them a game that they probably should have won. And if you take – and I hate to do the ifs,
the what if
stuff and all that.
You know, my dad said if ands and buts were candy and nuts every day would be Christmas. But.
Exactly. I hate to do that, but – with that said, if you do take those turnovers away, Clemson wins that game 20-13. That's including taking Clemson's free gift away from Duke. Because when you go look at 14 of Duke's 27 points came off Clemson turnovers. Okay? Clemson would have scored 4 times. There would have been 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. That's 20 points. Duke would have scored their 13 points, which they got 2 field goals and a touchdown that they earned. That was, sort of earned because one was, Barrett Carter had him tackled for a loss. He ends up escaping. And, you got to wrap him up, especially if your name's Barrett Carter. You got to wrap that up.
Yeah.
But anyway, it happened, but you still give it to him. But if you take all that away and add it in, Clemson wins that game 20-13. And I heard some people say the following week, well, if Clemson played Duke 10 times, they might lose 5. And I disagree with that. I think Clemson wins 9 times out of 10 if they play Duke.
Yep.
This was the one time that they lost. And it was because they played them in week 1, where if they played them in week 2, I believe they would have won the game. Because if you switch it up with Charleston Southern, Clemson would have learned a lot from that Charleston Southern game. It had helped them against Duke. That's why I don't think all is lost yet, Alex, with this team. And all is not lost. And look, nobody was more upset when Clemson lost to Duke than me. But now that
just go back and listen to last week's show, and you'll hear all about it.
Now that I'm 2 weeks removed from it, though, I can see, and I've went back and watched it myself, watched the film and watched what guys did, and I kind of did one analysis from it. I could see what Dabo is talking about and what the coaches are talking about. Like, they legitimately should not have lost that game. Clemson outplayed Duke, except for on the scoreboard. And, take nothing away from Duke. Duke won the game, and you give them credit for it because they took advantage of Clemson's mistakes, as a good team does. But my point being is all is not lost. And that Florida State game is not as lost as we might think it was after last week's game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. Except for those 2 plays in the first half, I was really impressed with what Cade Klubnik was able to do.
He bounced back from a horrible start.
28-37, 315, 4 touchdowns. I mean, this is what it kind of goes to what Coach Sweeney was saying in the preseason, that Cade has an ability to bounce back from bad plays and flush it and move on and make a spectacular play after it. It's something that maybe we didn't see in the Duke game, but we definitely saw it last week with what Cade was able to do. So I thought he made better reads, particularly in the second half. It always helps when you're able to run for 300 yards or 274 yards that in the passing game. I thought the backup quarterbacks played a heck of a game for Clemson too. I mean, Hunter Helms was 5 of 5 and Paul Tyson is 3 of 3. Can't do any better than that.
No, you can't. I thought Dabo talked about that. The quarterbacks completed 80% of their passes this past week. They did well. They managed the offense. They scored. I thought the running game was well. They to me, they rushed for over 300 yards because the fumble took away the 26 yards that would have put them over 300 yards rushing. So they ran the ball well for the 2 weeks in a row. You saw great balance from the offense and the defense. I mean, great balance. Yeah. Clemson right now, statistically, is one of the most balanced teams in the country. They're averaging well over 200 yards a game rushing, and they're averaging 260-something yards a game passing. I mean, that's pretty darn good balance right now, and that's what you're looking for. But, of course, everybody's focused still on that Duke game, and I'm telling you, man, I agree with Dabo. If they just take care of the football, they can be really, really special on offense. They just got to take care of the football. Easier said than done, Alex, because 8 of the last 9 games, Clemson has lost the turnover battle. And that is not good.
It's
That's
an
dating back
insane
to the Notre Dame
statistic.
game.
That's hard to do for any football team to lose the turnover battle in 8 of 9 games.
It's just amazing.
It seems like, seriously,
that's
you're
going to
watching,
turn, right?
It's like you're watching the same game every week is what it's felt like, dating back to about halfway through last year.
And you got to figure it's going to turn at some point. You got to figure that worm is going to turn. And if you're a Clemson fan, you hope that turns next week against Florida State. Because I'm telling you, get enough pressure on Jordan Travis. I saw it with my own eyes against LSU. I don't know what he was doing with the football. But, man, he's lucky he didn't have 2 pick sixes in that game on him. LSU just dropped the ball. That game could have been over before halftime if LSU converts those interceptions. They had them in their hands, had the chance to make a big play and didn't make it. There's opportunities there. I'm telling you, there's opportunities there.
Yeah, no, there definitely are. And I think a big part of if Clemson, obviously there's another game before that we'll talk about in a little bit. Right. But if Clemson wants to beat Florida State when not very many people are saying they are, whereas before the year, I think almost everybody was saying that Clemson was going to beat Florida State, at least in the ACC. I mean, the ACC writers and media members picked Clemson to win the conference. It's kind of turned, but a big key in that is going to be using Bo Collins. And this is something that, looking back to the Duke game, you hear all through fall camp how Bo Collins is back and better than ever, and then they hardly use him in Durham. And then they target him 9 times on Saturday. He gets 7 catches for 137 and a long touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I think implementing Bo Collins into the offense and finding ways to give him the ball in space is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, and I think if you do that, it's going to help Antonio Williams and Tyler Brown. It's going to help those guys get involved. And now we just need one other guy to start making some plays. And I'm looking at Adam Randall, if anybody. And if Adam Randall doesn't start making plays, then I say put the young man who's been hurt all the last 2 years, Troy Stellato, who finally played,
caught all 5 of his passes.
Yeah,
caught all 5 of his passes.
Yeah,
including one really good catch where he basically had to scoop the ball up off the ground.
Yeah, he showed how strong his hands were by doing that. I mean, go get him in there. He seems like a guy that wants to go make plays. I saw Adam Randall on the second play of the game. Cade throws a 50-50 ball down the sideline. He's got single coverage against a guy he's clearly more physical than, or at least I thought would be more physical than and bigger than. And the guy for Charleston Southern won the battle. And I'm like, what are you doing, Adam Randall? And guess what? Guess who we never saw get the ball again? Adam Randall.
Yep.
I mean, you didn't see a 50-50 ball go to him the rest of the game. Why is that? Well, he had an opportunity to show what he could do. He didn't show it. And so Clemson said at that point, the coaches said, well, we're done with that. That's not going to work. He's got to step up, I think, or somebody over on the boundary side has to step up and start making some plays. So if you do have Bo Collins doing what he's doing, you already got Antonio Williams. You know what you can get out of him. Now, all of a sudden, if you can get that third guy, now you got some balance to your offense. And by the way, I'm tired of hearing about Clemson's tight ends, and this is going to be the year. Look, Clemson's tight end ain't been worth the crap since Dwayne Allen was here.
Yeah.
I mean, Jordan Leggett. Jordan Leggett was here. They ain't been worth the crap since Jordan Leggett. And, it's just like, I'm tired of hearing about it. It's just like I said about the defense last week. Until you start doing it, I don't want to hear a thing from you. I don't want to hear anything from you until I start seeing you making plays at the tight end position. Now, I know last year with Allen, they had opportunities. They had to keep him to block and stuff. And so he probably would have made more plays, I think. But being the way things were last year at times, he had to stay in and block, and I get it. But, I'm just tired of it. We hear it every preseason. The tight end's going to do this, and it looks so good. And, oh, my gosh. And
we're using the middle of the field.
We're going to use the middle of the field
all the time.
And they get 2 targets against Charleston Southern. I'm just like, I'm tired of hearing it. Just stop it. Until you start doing it, I don't want to hear about it.
No, I'm with you. But one unit that we can talk about now, because I believe they would have lived up to Will's expectations this weekend. The Clemson defense allowed 73 yards, 1.6 yards per play. Mm-hmm. It's what you should do against a team like Charleston Southern that struggles to move the football against anybody. You should shut them down. and keep them under 100 yards. And the Clemson defense was able to do that.
They did, and they did. I thought they did an outstanding job and did what you're supposed to do against an inferior team. What I liked the most, though, about what they did was they played collectively together. Like I said last week, we saw a lot of guys making plays, but making them as individuals. And it was like, okay, that's great. They weren't really bringing the energy. I thought they brought the energy. They played collective. They went out together and made plays and were doing things. That's what we need to see from this Clemson defense every week. I think you look at the Woodaz interception return is a great example of that, because Jaden Lucas makes the play. He forces the ball out of the receiver's hands. And because Woodaz is trailing on the play, he gets a gift and he gets an interception for a touchdown. Last week against Duke, that ball fouls incomplete because everybody was playing. They were playing individually. They weren't playing collectively. There wasn't guys flying to the football. And when you have guys fly to the football on defense, that's what happens. Plays like that happen. They need to continue to do that. I think if they do that, Alex, this defense can be as good as anybody's defense in the country. I really believe that. But it's up to them. I think last week they showed that. They were dominant. They came out and dominated inferior opponent. This week, I want to see them do the same thing. Remember last year, Furman came in and threw for 300 and something yards. You're like, what the hell is this? And then a lot Louisiana Tech comes in and they throw for 300 yards, and you're like, what is wrong with this defense? Well, they weren't playing together. They weren't playing collectively. I think yesterday, the Duke game kind of woke them up a little bit and said, guys, we got to start playing together. Enough with this individual crap. Let's play together. You saw that in that game Saturday against Charles Southern. Now I want to see it 2 weeks in a row. We saw it in pieces last year. Remember Miami? They dominated Miami. Yeah. Looked really good. We saw that against Louisville as well. They looked good and causing turnovers, doing things. But we only saw it a few times last year. Georgia Tech, that was a great performance, I thought, against Georgia Tech to start the season. But we didn't see it consistently throughout the year. Right. I want to see it again this week. I want to see it because that way they can take that momentum into Florida State. And I think they can play Florida State. I think they can play that offense probably better than any. I'm going to say this. Clemson's defense, if they're playing up to their level, if they're playing the way they are supposed to play, they will be the toughest opponent Florida State will play all year on as far as Florida State's offense. It'll be the toughest opponent they will face all year will be that Clemson defense. Yeah, schematically, I think they match up pretty well against Florida State. It's just what you're saying, if they're able to put all the pieces together and play as a unit. And that's a hallmark of a veteran unit. Mm-hmm. When you see a unit that has a lot of younger players and not a lot of leadership, you see a lot of inconsistency. So this week, regardless of the opponent, and Florida Atlantic, they have some good players. They have some good individuals. They're a well-coached football team. They have a high-profile coach that coached at one of the elite programs in the country. Does he give them a kiss? Does he kiss them before every game? I mean, that's what he did at Texas. Remember, he kissed them before every game. He'd give them a kiss on the cheek or something. It was weird. Yeah, I hope that's not happening at Florida Atlantic. That's weird. I don't want to see that. But anyway. that's a hallmark of an inconsistency is a hallmark of youth. On your defense, and they look like a veteran unit last week. And now whether or not they're going to look like that again this weekend, I think that's going to tell you more about the leadership of the team, more about whether they're growing up and growing into this defense that everybody knows that they can be, that people have been talking about how they should be. Mm-hmm. You're going to see if that's a thing this week. TJ Parker, he was great in the game too. 4 tackles. How much longer before he starts? Right. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, I mean, he's too good to stay off the field, and he's playing too hard, I think, to stay off the field. If he keeps playing like that, it's only a matter of time. Peter Woods, man, he looked great. Yeah, he's dominant, just rolling guys over, just smashing them to the ground like the Hulk, smash. I mean, I love it. I love the physicality, the way they played the other day, and that's how they're going to have to play. They played physical against Duke. I don't want people to think they didn't. And one thing the game plan was a lot different against Duke. It was, but also a lot of people said they didn't get to the quarterback and they didn't try to. That's wrong. They did, because Riley Leonard threw away 9 passes. 9 times he had to throw the ball out of bounds. Now, that means they're getting pressure to him. He's just a smart quarterback. He wasn't forcing things down the field. He was making sure there wasn't those stupid turnover. He was doing what he could to help his defense out, because he saw how good his defense was playing. But Clemson got pressure against Duke. They just didn't get them to the ground, but they got
Yep.
pressure on them. And they got pressure last week, but again, they played a triple option team, so you're not going to get that much pressure. So people are like, I'm worried about the pass rush. No, you're not. Pay attention. 9 throwaways. You don't ever see a quarterback have 9 throwaways. That means they got to him 9 times or more.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get him to the ground. And Duke did a good job of doing what Furman did last year, what Louisiana Tech did last year, what Florida State did last year, what Notre Dame did, and that's get the ball out of their hands fast to try to neutralize that defensive line and that rush. That's how you do it. Now, what you got to do –
screen them to death.
You screen them. What you got to do if you're Clemson is get your damn hands up. If you know teams are doing quick stuff, get your hands up. Start batting those plays away. Start anticipating the ball coming out fast. Get your hands up.
Especially when you have the length and the athleticism that the Clemson front seven does. I mean, you have a front seven that's the most athletic it's been in years at Clemson. You got to start using that. Use your length, use your athleticism.
And when a guy lets you go and he gives you a free race to the quarterback, that screen – it's telling me screen. I'm yelling at the TV, right? If I'm watching my Steelers play, I'm like, screen. So they gotta work together where the linebackers are yelling at the linemen and letting them know it's a screen.
Yeah. This is something that me and you talked about on the phone this week as I was going back and watching things. It almost to me seems like that the Clemson defensive line is coached to bum rush the quarterback when they run a screen. And I've never seen that before, but when you see it on every single screen for 2 years, that the defensive line is charging the quarterback on a screen, it almost feels like they're being coached that way.
But there's no way because they're going to –
There's no way.
They're going to get outflanked, and it's going to be a big play for the other team. And Duke did it, how many times? 4 times?
Yeah.
4 of his completions. By the way, he only completed 50% of his passes, and 4 of them were screens that went for over 20 yards. So, Florida State, guys – oh my gosh, they'll be screaming.
That quarterback likes to get the ball out of his hands fast.
Yes, and he loves to get it to his running back.
Their system's predicated on, and they have the athleticism and the speed to be able to gash you on screens in a way that, they got a lot more athleticism and speed than Duke did. So if you're giving up 20 yards to Duke on a screen, you better watch out when the Seminoles come to town.
You're giving a 60-yarder to them. It's going to the house if you're doing that. Got to be better there. There's the things they got to improve on. No doubt. And this week, I think La Tech will give them that kind of look.
FAU.
Excuse me. FAU. I'm sorry.
Same colors, red, white, and blue.
It is red, white. That's what I thought. Same exact colors. And, anyway. But, yeah. Would it have been cool, though, if they had FAU actually playing in this game like they did a few years ago for the safety movie?
Yeah, for the safety movie.
Yeah, would have been cool. Like they could have actually done that, So,
the
cool.
craziest thing is I guess I technically got to see that Clemson FAU game twice. Because I was at that game, the original game in 2006, and then they filmed the movie halftime of the game I was at. So I guess technically I was there twice.
Yeah, well, I was too. I was, you know what? I was in the press box twice for both of them. A lot of people forget it was that 2006 FAU game. A couple things happened there. Jacoby Ford had I believe, had a punt return for a touchdown in that game, and then also. Anthony Waters got hurt on the first play of the game, tore his ACL, was out for the season on that.
Yep, I remember that too.
Yep.
Let's talk about Florida Atlantic for a minute. I know I had that at the bottom of the rundown, but it just seems like it fits in better.
Since we're here.
Since we're already talking Clemson, let's just go ahead and talk about Florida Atlantic. They entered the game 1-1, landslide win over Monmouth in week 1, and then Bart Boatwright's Ohio Bobcats with a 17-10 win. Over them last weekend. What do you think about this Florida Atlantic team? This is a game last week where they had a 10-7 lead at halftime and just kind of allowed Ohio to stick around and ended up dropping a home game. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game at Clemson this weekend. But what do you think about this Florida Atlantic team?
It's an interesting team. We mentioned Tom Herman is the head coach there. He actually didn't do too bad of a job at Texas. He just didn't go to Texas standards, right?
Right.
I believe former Ohio State offensive coordinator under our boy over there at Ohio State.
Ryan Day?
No, not Ryan Day. Ryan Day
Jim
replaced
Tressel?
him.
Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer. There you go. Urban Meyer. Yeah.
I'll just go through every Ohio State coach until
I believe he was the offensive coordinator on the 2014 team that Clemson beat in the Orange Bowl that year. So, and then I think he went to Texas that next year after they won the national championship and beat Alabama. And so, so he's a good coach, I think, and so I think they'll come prepared going into Death Valley, night game. They'll be on national TV on ACC Network, and a lot of people are going to want to be watching, and they're going to want to show out. And so this is their Super Bowl, if you will. So they got a quarterback in Thompson who came from Texas with Tom Herman. Now the thing you like about this guy, if you're Clemson, is he's a drop back guy. He's not a very mobile guy. This is the kind of guy Clemson feeds off of. So you might see this defensive line get to the quarterback a little bit. We'll see if they try to dink and dunk it real fast. If so, I look for Clemson to adjust and play a little cover 3 there with it, maybe some quarters to kind of counter that if that's the kind of style they're going to play. But, I think this is a game that Clemson should dominate, in my opinion, Alex. But at the same time, I think it's a good test to have because there are some pieces on this team, especially on the offensive side, that could challenge Clemson from time to time.
Yeah, Casey Thompson last week, he threw the ball 42 times, and they only ran the ball 15 times against Ohio. So that's going to be interesting to see if they even really try to run the ball against Clemson or if they just try to screen them to death and pick up yards where they can. I almost think that's what, if you're Florida Atlantic, you want to get the ball out of your hand fast. And I don't even know if you try to run the ball against Clemson. I mean, Clemson's been pretty stalwart against the run for a while.
Well, unless you Duke and they ran for 199 against them. I mean, most of that came after Clemson had kind of rolled over there after that touchdown in the fourth quarter. But no, you're right. I mean, Clemson for the most part is pretty good at stopping the run. Last week, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't much, was it? They only had 76 total yards for the game, so I think rushing yards was 50.
Yeah, so they had Charleston Southern 61 yards. Or no, that's passing. They had
15 yards
12
rushing.
yards.
12 yards rushing. All right, so there we go. 12 yards rushing. I mean, and that was a team who came in and wants to run the ball. So Clemson did a good job taking that away. I don't think they're going to worry about that with Florida Atlantic. It sounds like they want to throw the football because you only ran the ball how many times? 15 times against
15
Ohio
times.
Against Ohio, who's a MAC team, who's not MAC teams aren't known to being like run stoppers. That's
29. They only finished the game with 5 yards rushing against Ohio
the Bobcats
last week.
Yeah.
Casey Thompson was sacked 3 times for a loss of 22 yards. That's most of that, but
still,
I mean, they only gained 34 yards.
Yeah,
on
and 15
attempts.
carries on 13 attempts.
Yeah,
that's bad.
Yes,
I don't know why. I mean, they obviously don't trust their running game because they didn't seem like they even tried to run. So that's
Larry McCammon led the way with 7 carries for 23 yards.
Old Larry,
and a long of 12.
Old Larry, you got to watch out for old Larry.
Legs.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's interesting. How Clemson's going to be wanting to shut down the pass in this game and make them run it. Because that's their strength, right? Is to run the ball. I mean, is to throw the football. So it kind of falls into what I think Clemson's good at, though. I mean, I think Clemson's good at both, but Clemson's secondary, I've been impressed with so far.
No, I have to, and even last week, impressed without Andrew Makuba in the secondary, and he's still. I believe Dabo said yesterday he's still day to day. What are you hearing about Makuba and when he could be back involved in the game plan on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I doubt he'll play this week. It didn't sound like it when we talked to Dabo yesterday. He was still day to day. Dabo was listing him basically as questionable. So they're going to go with Khalil Barnes, probably going to get the start at that nickel back spot for a second week in a row. Technically, last week he didn't start at nickel because Clemson played the 4-3. So but when they did play the nickel, he was the first guy out there. So he gets the start in that sense. But they'll come out in, I think, more of a 4-2-5 this week instead of a 4-3. I think you'll see Woodaz play a lot of that safety position as well. this week because they like to get him on the field because he's a playmaker. The guy makes plays.
I mean, that was clear as day in the game on Saturday. I mean, it was hard to ignore with the pick six, and then also some pretty bone crushing hits in the game too.
Right, he was everywhere. So he's a guy that you got to get on the field and find different ways to get him. So you'll see him play some of that safety position as well. But also Avian Terrell, might see him a lot. He's getting a lot of reps this past week. He actually played like 13 or 14 snaps last week. So they really like him. He's a great story because he came in the camp. He came to Dabo and says, Coach, I want to get on the field. What do I got to do to get on the field? I want to be out there. I don't want to just, think about maybe I get out there. I want to get out there and find a way because I think I can help. And said, like, okay, well, you willing to play nickelback? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So he gets out there and, he's playing nickelback. And so you like a young guy like that who says, hey, I want to play. I'll even play out of a position that I've never really played before to get out there, and so that tells you a little bit about him and what they think of him too, because he was making plays, I heard, during camp, and he's going to be a ball player. They said he's got a chance to be better than his brother. And his brother's an all-pro.
Yeah, an all-pro for Atlanta and had a heck of a career at Clemson. So that's a high compliment coming from the coaching staff on that one.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to see what he's able to do in this game with possibly a little bit more reps at that spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am too, and I like to see. He looked like he played well. Like a couple tackles, I believe, last week out of that nickel position, and looked really solid when he was out there. Didn't make any mistakes, and so him and Khalil Barnes kind of shared the snaps, 27 snaps between them. I think Barnes had 14, he had 13. So they obviously think a lot of it that they shared them. Both true freshmen, by the way, both guys. They love Khalil Barnes too. They think he's going to be a superstar. And so, you got a very young secondary, but these guys are like really, really good. Khalil Barnes is going to be probably a future safety. Avion Terrell is going to be a future corner. So those two guys are going to be starting somewhere here in the next couple of years at one of those two positions.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a host of young talent on that team. What do you want to see from the Tigers this weekend against Florida Atlantic? Obviously, I'm going to say the same thing as last week so that you don't have to say it again. A turnover-free game is what fans should want to see from Clemson this weekend against another opponent that they should handle pretty easily. I think you want to see them continue that second half that they had against Charleston Southern right from the get-go.
Yeah, take care of the football. Number one thing, I think, right? Dabo really stressed to Cade Klubnik how he's got a very good defense. They got a defense that they think got a chance to be pretty special, and that they need to take care of the ball with this defense. They need to not put them in situations where they're having to defend their 1 yard line and stuff like that, or giving them easy points. We're giving them somebody a pick six. Help your defense out. Take the sack. Call the timeout. Do whatever you got to do. Just don't turn the ball over. And so I'm anxious to see how they do there with that this week. And then I think, more than anything, just go out there and dominate the game on both sides of the ball. I think that'll be, to me, that's what I want to see them do. I want to see them go out like they did last week, because they kind of did come out last week, go right down on the field and score and up 7-0. The defense gets a 3 and out and everything looking like you're doing it, but then you start the ball over. So let's eliminate those turnovers and use that fast start like they did last week, get that momentum going, get the crowd in the game so the defense can play off that energy. And then I think they're going to roll easy. I think this is a game where Clemson can actually, if Ohio can hold them to 10 points, then Clemson, now granted, if Clemson gets the games that I hand, Clemson's going to play some third stringers. But I see no reason why the Clemson starters shouldn't have a shutout, and that the game should be way out of hand. And so I'm picking 52-0 Clemson, and we'll see how it goes. But I think, yes, they can score 50 points, I think, on this team. And I think they can move the football. And it'd be great if they did. If they can go back-to-back games scoring 50-plus points, that's going to do wonders for their confidence next week going into the Florida State game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. This is a game where the Clemson offense should be able to really show some things off early, kind of start that party on Parents Weekend pretty early in the game. That'd be a good sign to see from this team, and just to play clean. If Clemson fans want to have any kind of hope going into that Florida State game, They need to see 4 full quarters of what this team is capable of. So I think that's kind of the task at hand on Saturdays, a complete game. We talked about last week how in college you don't get preseason games. Well, last week and this week, they count on your record, but with the opponents that you're playing, you should be able to work on some things and really get into a good rhythm. And that's going to be good for this Clemson team to have, 2 games that they can build up to this marquee matchup in Death Valley, a noon kick next weekend. So what do you think in terms of Clemson falling out of the AP Top 25 this week? My personal take on this is that if you thought that they didn't deserve to be in this week, why did you think that they deserved to be in the week before? But how do you feel about Clemson falling out? Obviously, it doesn't matter. It's still early in the year. It's a long time until the college football playoff rankings even come out. But how did you feel when you saw Clemson drop out?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you what I know. Look, I've been doing rankings since I was 9 years old. Okay. I mean, seriously, I've had my own rankings. I still do my own rankings now, and
where did you have Clemson in the Will Vandervoort Top 25?
I had them 21. I had them number 21. I had Duke number 20, Clemson 21. I'm a big believer on if you beat that team, I don't care what happened the very next week. If you beat that team, you deserve to stay ahead of that team as long as you don't lose. Right. Yep. And I'm big on that. Like I said, I've been doing this since I was a kid. And then I'm a former AP voter. So I did this. Like, I know what the process is and what it takes. And so this is what happened, I think. 2 things I think happened. But I think the main thing that happened was across the country, while all of us are working, as you all know, we're all sitting in the press box, working, writing stories. So people understand we're writing stories as the game is actually happening in front of us.
Yeah.
We don't write after the game. We're writing during the game. And we're writing all kinds of things, scoring summaries, sidebars, game stories. We're writing all kinds of things, columns. Everything's going on.
Stories, putting things on the message board. It's an involved process.
Right. Yes, it is. It is not just like we sit there and do this. Oh, that was a good play. We don't do that. So
if somebody's doing this, they probably don't need to be in the press box.
That's exactly right. So we were what I think happened was that the writers all across the country are doing what we do, and we see it. They look up and they see Charleston Southern's beating Clemson 14-7. Are you kidding me? What the hell's going on there? And then go back to work, right? You go back to work. You look, it's 14-14. Gosh, Clemson must be awful. And then that's the last they see. Yep. They don't even check to see that Clemson won 66-17. They just thought it was 14-14 at one point. That's all they needed to see. And they're like, you know what? I'm throwing them out. They lost to Duke, and then they did this. I don't even know what Charleston Southern score was, but I'm throwing them out. And they didn't see that Clemson went on to score 59 unanswered points or whatever it was, and 59-3, 59 to the last 62 points, I should say. They didn't even look to see that, and that's what happened. And then there's always these 1 or 2 pollsters who just forget teams. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to rank them. Yes, that happens.
And it is a hard job too. I mean, not to make fun of these writers that are making these.
I'm making fun of them because I was one. Oh, and I am a writer, and I was a
but
voter.
You also know.
I took it very serious. I took my poll very serious.
I'm sure there are some pollsters out there who don't take it as seriously, who aren't watching.
They aren't. I agree.
15 games in a weekend. They're probably.
You've been with me, Alex. You know how late I stay up watching all the games.
I'm doing the same thing here. I got to work on Saturdays, and as I'm working, and after I'm working, and before I'm working, I'm watching college football all day with YouTube TV. I've got 4 games going on at once, and I got a second screen with 4 others. So I'm watching as many games as I can. But there are a lot of other people who don't want to do that, or they treat their work away where when they're done covering their game, they're done watching the sport for the weekend. There are some people like that too.
There are some people like that. And so, I just take it very serious when I was a AP voter, and I would make sure that I watched every game, and I still do, even though I'm not an AP voter anymore, but I do my own ranking, and I still take it serious. I put it on our message board at the Clemson Insider so people see it. And I stay up and watch every game. The last game pretty much is over. I mean, I fell asleep for the Oregon State game, woke up, the game was I
Or
woke
Texas
up right
Tech.
at the end of the second overtime. I'm like, holy crap, so because I fell asleep during it because it was a long day of work, obviously. But I try to watch it, right? I'm trying to watch it all. And then I went back and rewound and watched what I could watch. And there's just, there's that times when, you got to me, if you're going to do it, you got to take it serious. I think in this situation, the first thing happened, people just saw it was 14-14, and then they tuned Clemson out at that point. Clemson was done. And then there is one more thing, I think. And I call it the Dabo Swinney factor.
This is kind of what I was waiting for you to get into.
Yeah, the Dabo Swinney factor. And Dabo's very outspoken about his faith. And a lot of people in our business, not me and Alex, but a lot of people in our business, they aren't
a big fan of that.
They aren't a big fan of that because of their political views and things of that nature. I'll just say that. And where, I think that should be your political views or what you think about somebody's faith and all as a reporter should be not. I was taught not to be a factor, that you got to look at things objectively. And you can't hold somebody because of their belief or what their political views are or all that. You can't hold that against them when you're doing a job. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in our business, a lot of our colleagues that don't feel that way. And they make decisions based on certain things. And that's why I say there's the Dabo factor. They don't like some of the things Dabo does and says, and they hold that against him.
They don't like his candor.
I mean,
there's people candor either.
There's people I've heard all over the country, and we've done it. Me and you have met them when we travel to, bowl games and stuff like that in the college football playoffs and all that. And they meet Dabo and they actually see how good he is. They're like, wow, he's good. You guys must enjoy working with him. I thought he'd be blankety blank. And I'm like, why would you think that? Well, because of the way he's portrayed by the media, by the national media and stuff. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, yeah, you see, he's not that way. And that's why it's called the Dabo Swinney factor, because people outside of the Southeast, they think Dabo Swinney's a demon. I mean, they really do. They just,
there are a lot of people that
they don't know who he is, and they think he's phony. They think it's he's doing it for show. He's a cornball. Yeah. He's a goober.
Which he is a cornball.
But he's not a goober though. I mean, for people to say that, I get mad about that. But that's what people outside of the Southeast think, primarily because they're looking at their own political opinions and their what they want to do and what they think their things should be and how things should be run, and they hold that against Dabo on the way Dabo with his faith.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a factor. Is Clemson is unfortunately a victim of things that it can't control in that regard. I mean, a person shouldn't have to act a different way in front of people in order to get perceived better. I mean,
right, Alex,
he shouldn't have to change who he is.
This is a compliment to both you and me. But there's a guy who's in our business, colleague of ours, who's covered Clemson and South Carolina sports for decades. And me and him were talking one time. I'm not going to say his name because I wouldn't be fair to him. But me and him were talking. He was talking about journalists today, how journalists just aren't like they used to be. And he says, but I will say this. He's like, pointing to me, he says, you did a good job training Alex Dodd. Because he's one of the young people in today's business of journalism that actually looks at things objectively. He says, and that's a hard thing to find now in journalism, is a journalist being objective. Our job is to be objective.
Yeah.
Our job is to step away and look at things from the outside and report what we see. You're not reporting when I'm doing a game, when I'm covering a Clemson game, and look, my family has Clemson ties. I'm not going to lie to you. You see back here on there, I've written Clemson history books. I've covered Clemson for a long time. It is what it is. However, I'm very objective in my job because my job is not to want Clemson to win or want Clemson to lose or want Florida State to win. My job is to report what I see, exactly how I see it, and send it to you, the reader. That's my only job.
Yeah. Not
to put an opinion in. And Alex, from the way I trained you, we're not supposed to put an opinion in your story or nothing unless it's a column. Now, if it's a column, that's different. Two different things. You got a story and you got a column. Column is different. Column means opinions, So you got to be, but even in your column, you need to be objective. And I think a lot of the new media is not objective anymore. And it starts at the national level. And, we could go on and on about this, but it starts at the national level. That's where it's really dropped. And young journalists don't know what journalism really is anymore.
Yeah.
They really don't. And that's the sad thing about it, because I come from the old school of how you were trained and taught to do things. Mr. Webb, my former professor in college, was great at teaching us to be very objective when we do things. And that's how I trained you guys. And, and so I appreciate that journalist in South Carolina, when he told me that last year, giving you a compliment, but at the same time giving me one too. And I appreciated that he recognized how good of a job you do objectively.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, mystery South Carolina journalist, for saying it.
You know who he is.
No, I definitely appreciate it. And yeah, that shouldn't, your own personal feelings or, the way something lands on you shouldn't affect the way that you report it. It's not fair to the readers, and it's really not fair to the profession either to act that way. But I do think that's part of the reason why Clemson gets treated a little bit differently than everybody else.
Look, and
some people roll their eyes when you say that, but when you look at the way that things have played out, just with Clemson in the AP top 25 over the last
not self-promoting, but I am. But in
my book, you should read it.
In my book, The Hidden History of Clemson Football, I was a part of Frank Howard in here. I talk about, Frank Howard had the exact same struggles that Dabo is going through today with the national media. And it's you go all the way back to the 50s, and Clemson was having the same problems with the national media, just not want Clemson there. And
it mattered a lot more in Frank Howard's day than it does today, because you didn't have a neutral committee of individuals that decided who got to play for a national championship. You had writers that picked the national champion, and that really hurt.
Right,
Frank
and
Howard,
Danny
at least
Ford,
one instance.
Yeah, and Danny Ford had some of the same issues with the national media as well back in his day. Sometimes it was for different reasons, obviously, but there still was this negative connotation toward Clemson football. I remember when Clemson was playing in the national championship game, and some of the people out there probably remember this, 1982. Like, they didn't even know where Clemson was. Like, people in the national media didn't even know that Clemson was located in South Carolina. They thought it was like in North Carolina or North Georgia and stuff like that. It's like,
I've heard people before that thought that Clemson was in Ohio.
Right.
I had somebody today that was talking to me, and where'd you go to school? And I told him, he's like, where is that? Is that in Greenville? Is that in Spartanburg? I'm like, no, it's in Clemson.
It's in Clemson. The city's called Clemson. It's just interesting to me. It's as a program that historically, when I say historically, Clemson historically is one of the top 15 college football programs in the country. Historically, that's on wins, all-time wins. That's all-time record. That's all-time bowl games. That's national championships. That's AP rankings. Historically, Clemson's one of the top 15 programs in the country. And people don't know that.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, people don't think they're supposed to be there because they're too small or what. I don't know what it is. It's just nuts because they've been there forever, all the way going back to the late 1930s when Banks McFadden, coached by Jess Neely, led Clemson to the 1940 Cotton Bowl, their first ever bowl game. Clemson's been to bowl games before most major people think of that went to bowl games. Yep. Clemson's been to more bowl games than Notre Dame. But people don't know that because they don't want to see that,
or they don't care to know, or they don't care to know the
history. They just don't think Clemson belongs there for some reason, and I don't know why they don't think that, because Clemson's always been there. So, hey, Clemson will keep doing Clemson, though, as we know.
Well, let's move on to Smoke or Fire, and I got two statements here in Smoke or Fire talking about programs that have been there. Mm-hmm. And whether or not they're there again. First of all, let's talk about Miami because they're in the ACC. They're on Clemson's schedule later in the year. Smoke or Fire, Miami is back.
I'm going to say right now it's smoke. And the reason why is because, yes, they've won 2 games and they've looked good. Don't get me wrong. They beat Miami of Ohio the way you're supposed to, physically dominated that game. I really liked what I saw out of Miami in that game. Then they carried it over and did the same thing to really dominated the fourth quarter against Texas A&M.
Yeah.
But it's Texas A&M. Nobody has underperformed and been more disappointing in the last 5 years, or really, let's just call it the last 25 years, than Texas A&M. I mean, what, one 10-win season in the last 20-something years or something like that? I mean, but every year they're supposed to be there. And so I don't really know still with Miami yet. You know, when they play Florida State, when they play Clemson, when they play North Carolina, I think maybe we'll have a little bit better idea of Miami at those times. But right now, so I'm going to say smoke because I just don't know enough yet. Not enough information there for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. But at the same time, they did look awfully impressive.
They look good.
Against that Texas A&M team last week, and they're, as we're recording right now, up 34-0 on Bethune-Cookman. I think you can probably go ahead and chalk that one up in the third quarter to say that Miami.
Again, we don't learn anything, right? We're not learning anything off that.
Yeah, we're not learning anything, and I do agree with you that Texas A. It's hard to judge a football team based off of their performance in a home game against Texas A&M.
A&M went 5-7 last year. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. So, but I was definitely impressed with Tyler Van Dyke and have been for the start of the year. He looks like the quarterback that we heard he was going to be last year. 21-30 against A&M, 374 yards and 5 touchdowns. And this is a guy that he can use his legs too. He didn't rush for anything against A&M, but he had a rushing touchdown today on Thursday against Bethune-Cookman. But Tyler Van Dyke being a dog, being a good quarterback, I'm going to say fire on that. I'm also going to say, like you, delayed on whether or not we could say Miami is back.
So you're saying there's like a little fire, but it's like you're mostly still smoke.
Yeah, mostly still smoke, but there's a spark under there. There's a spark. Yeah. They have the potential to be back. And I think Mario Cristobal, you're seeing good early returns. Because, this is a team last year that, they lost some games that they shouldn't have even been close.
Oh, I agree. Oh, yeah.
This is a team that got blitzed by Middle Tennessee State at home. This is a team that lost on the road to A&M last year that shouldn't have. To come off of a year like that and to dominate Texas A&M in your home venue, to dominate these other two teams that you should beat, that's a positive sign. I will say the early returns on the ACC this year have been impressive. The way that the conference as a whole has performed against Power 5 opponents has been impressive. But, yeah, a little too early to tell if Miami's back.
What you hope right now is they got Temple next week, so they'll go to 4-0, no doubt. Then they got Georgia Tech after that. They'll go to 5-0. We still aren't going to know anything about them.
They're going to be ranked like 5th.
They're going to be, but then they got North Carolina on the road on the 14th of October, and then Clemson goes there. If you're Clemson, and this is what I'm hoping, I'm hoping like Clemson beats Florida State, and then Clemson continues to win, and then Clemson goes into that game, 5-1, 4-1, what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4-1. Clemson goes into that game 4-1 and feeling good about itself. Miami's 6-0, 5-0, whatever it is at that time. And they're feeling good about themselves. And you got a great crowd there. Because that's one thing, as many times I've been to Miami.
There's nobody there tonight. It's a Thursday night.
But I've been there. I've been to Miami many times covering that game, and there's nobody in the stands. Nobody. There's more Clemson people than Miami fans. And, and sat down in South Florida for those games. And so I would love to see it like a Clemson-Miami game have some meaning. And I think that game would be. And so they're going to have back-to-back weeks where they're going to have a chance to show if they are really fire, Alex, when they play at North Carolina on the 14th, and then they host Clemson on the 21st. We're going to find out about Miami during that 2-week stretch.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I didn't have this on the rundown for Smoke and Fire, but let's talk Smoke and Fire on North Carolina. Do we see North Carolina as a legitimate contender in the ACC? Obviously, they went out and dominated South Carolina in the opener, but last week against a good App State team, I mean, it looked like the game last year, but App State in it with the chance to win it at the end. What do you think about this North Carolina team? Or do you even know anything about them? It's almost like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I think right now, well, first of all, App State's better than South Carolina. I think if App State played South Carolina right now, they'd beat them.
Yeah,
I mean, App State threw the ball 43. App State threw the ball.
They've gone toe to toe with Power 5 teams since they moved into the FBS, and
correct.
Heck, I mean, they did it in the FCS too.
Well, let's think about this. Didn't App State beat South Carolina just a few years ago? They did. Yeah. And also, if I'm not mistaken, App State threw the ball 43 times last week against North Carolina and didn't give up one single sack.
Yep.
South Carolina threw the ball that many times and gave up 9 sacks and had their quarterback on the butt probably another 9 times. I mean, it was bad. He was just, you wondered if he was going to survive the game, Spencer Rattler. South Carolina's offensive line's bad.
Yeah.
And, I know people don't want to say it. And, last week, Furman with 9 minutes or something to go in the second quarter is up 14-7.
Yep.
So, on them. And, I mean, yes, Clemson was trailing 14-7 to Charleston Southern. Yes. But it was also a different way they were trailing. And it was early in this, it wasn't Charleston Southern didn't have the lead very long. Furman led way into the second quarter before South Carolina finally started getting control of the game. There's some issues in Columbia. They got to get fixed. I think they will. I think he'll, as we said before, Shane Beamer's a good coach. I think he will get it fixed. He's done it. He's proven that each of the last 2 years. But right now, I think App State's a better team than South Carolina right now, and they would beat them if they played them. So I think North Carolina played a better team last week. I think we're going to find out a little bit about North Carolina from a physical standpoint this week against Minnesota, who likes to run the ball. I think North Carolina will win this game, but then next week is the big test for me. They go to Pittsburgh on the road against a very physical Pittsburgh team. Pittsburgh lost last week, and they got a tough game in the backyard brawl this week against West Virginia. But I still think that's going to be a good test for North Carolina. So I think the verdict's still out. I still say smoke right now with North Carolina. They got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion, is Drake May. But I still don't know how physical of a football team they are.
Yeah, no, I think I'm smoke on North Carolina too. It's just, I just wasn't impressed with what I saw from that defense against App State. Given the fact that App State is a better team, I still think, you hear all this talk after that South Carolina game about how Gene Chiswick's got that group rolling, and then I just wasn't impressed with what they did against the Mountaineers at home in Chapel Hill. Texas, smoke or fire on Texas. Goes to Tuscaloosa, does what me and Will said they would do with a 34-24
You said cover.
win.
I said
cover,
win.
but they covered.
I said outright win. So let's get the facts straight. I said
you don't get bonus points. You don't get bonus points for saying straight up.
Yes, you do. You get a bonus that you're the one who said straight up they were going to win. So yes,
Texas with a very real victory, and Will with a moral victory last week in Tuscaloosa.
I don't know how that's moral when I got the win.
Smoke or fire on this Texas team that outscored Alabama 21-8 in the fourth quarter.
I say fire without a doubt. It's fire. They're a doggone good football team. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I mean, first of all, last year they were a pretty good football team last year, and I thought they had a chance to beat Alabama last year, and they would have, I think, if the quarterback stays in the whole game. I think they would have beaten Alabama last year. But I had a good feeling about it this year. I just thought they had playmakers. They had the kind of quarterback that gives Alabama fits, and I just like their defense. I think they're very physical defense that can get after people. And we saw that in the Alabama game where they got physical with Alabama. They are a legit football team. They're a legit national championship contender. I think when it's all said and done, they're going to be playing for the national title, to be honest with you. I really believe that.
It's hard not to think that this Texas team has a clear path to the national title. I mean, this is a team that, they asserted their will physically at Alabama. Yeah, they settled for a couple field goals.
That's the first time. First time in Nick Saban's career. That means at Michigan State, LSU, and Alabama that he lost a home game by double digits.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and Texas looked good doing it. It's not like they just got these gimmies. I mean, Jalen Milroe threw a couple of picks, but I mean, Quinn Ewers, 349 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Sanders, the receiver, over 100 yards. I mean, this team is legit, and it's good for college football for Texas to be back.
It is. It's good for college football. It's good for everybody involved.
Unless you're Alabama.
Unless you're Alabama, and I told you, I said everybody's going to be wondering. And you said stories this week. Alabama and Clemson are gone. The new wave is come over. I think that's still a little too early to tell. But everybody has caught up with Clemson and Alabama. There's no doubt about that. We've seen both teams sliding the last few years as far as college football playoff appearances. Clemson's missed the last 2 years. Alabama has missed, twice now, and this is probably going to be the second straight year they miss coming up. So, it's a interesting dynamic that's going on here at college football. I think Georgia's still at the top. We're going to talk about that in a minute in our pick six. But Texas to me is the real deal, man. And you look at their schedule, they got Wyoming this week. So even if they do have a little bit of a letdown, they're still going to win. Wyoming undefeated, by the way.
That is a good Wyoming team.
Yeah, undefeated.
That's going down to Texas and getting paid, $1.8 million to do so.
Then they go to Baylor. They're going to beat. Then they go to Kansas. Kansas comes to them. They're going to beat. So you're 5-0, and you got Oklahoma coming in on the 1st of October, that first Saturday, down there, the Red River rivalry. Oklahoma's
Red River
better.
Rivalry, shootout, showdown.
Yeah, Oklahoma's better, but I still think Texas is just much better. And I think they win that game. Then they got Houston. Then they play BYU. BYU could be the team that could be a thorn in the side. They're a physical football team. They're pretty darn good. And
they're very well coached.
They're very well coached. They get up for games like this. That one, and then they got Kansas State back-to-back. So they got BYU and Kansas State back-to-back, both at home. That's where I'm watching. And then they go on the road, play at TCU on November 11th. By the way, 11/11, Make-A-Wish. So you know what my wish is, Alex. Texas, and then they got Iowa
Will's
State.
wish is for the crowd to be full at Hard Rock Stadium when Clemson plays at Miami. That's Will's wish.
Yeah, that's it. And then they finish off with Texas Tech in the year. So really the middle of that schedule, that 3-week stretch there where they got BYU, Kansas State, and TCU. One of those games are on the road. The other 2 at home. That's going to be the interesting stretch for them. I think they get through that, they're going to go undefeated.
Yeah, I think so too. And you got to think just the depth of this Texas team. That's the biggest difference to me between their team this year and their team last year, and definitely their teams of just painful mediocrity in the 2010s. But this is a Texas team that has serious depth. They have dudes, and they're well coached, and they got the X factor with the quarterback too. I mean, you've got all the pieces to make a big run down there in Austin. Matthew McConaughey, very happy.
Do you know how how you can recognize sports writers have been around Brent Venables for a long period of time?
No.
When you say you're talking about somebody, you say they got dudes.
That has to be it.
That was Brent Venables' number one thing.
Pick that up from BV.
Yeah, you picked that up. You definitely did. I'd say the same thing. Anybody that's been around Coach Venables long enough, he says that all the time. He's like, they got dudes. And
he would definitely say that about this Texas team. This Texas team has dudes.
They do.
And they're fun to watch, and it's going to be fun to watch those games in the middle part of their schedule.
Yep.
Let's move on here to our pick six. We didn't talk about some teams over the course of the show, but we're going to talk about some of them now. And the first one you mentioned in our pick six here, South Carolina at Georgia. Georgia, 27.5-point favorite. That game at noon Eastern in Athens. Will, what you got? They cover?
Well, first of all, I think it's a 3:30 game.
Oh, daggone.
Yeah, I think that's a 3:30 game. if I'm not mistaken.
It's always tough to make the
3:30.
adjustment to living in Mountain Time. But,
Yeah, I know, buddy.
that's
I'm with you.
3:30.
That is a 3:30 CBS game. Okay, so Georgia, South Carolina, 3:30 in Athens. South Carolina gave up 9 sacks to North Carolina in week 1. Georgia's hungry for some sacks. The dogs are smelling it. They can smell that chicken blood. They're ready to eat them chicken bones and put them in their legs and rip them up.
Zaxby's is from Athens. They're smelling that Zaxby's chicken.
Yeah, they're smelling it, man. They're smelling them chicken bones. They're ready to rip that legs right off that chicken. And that chicken is Spencer Rattler, unfortunately for him. And they're ready to get after that rooster, if you will. And I know Georgia hasn't looked that great at times the first couple of weeks, but they've been playing exhibition games. Let's just call it what it is.
And they're breaking in a new quarterback, and they're figuring some stuff out. I mean,
they played Tennessee, UT Martin or whatever, right? And then last week was – who was it last week? I can't even remember. It was a nobody.
Sister Mary.
It was Ball State, who replaced Oklahoma on their schedule. Yeah, without a doubt, I think Georgia – I'm saying Georgia covers because I think Georgia's just going to dominate. And I look back last year. Remember what happened last year in Columbia? Yeah. I think it could be that bad.
Yeah, it could be.
If Georgia comes to play, and this is Georgia's first big game of the year, so they're going to come ready to play, I think Georgia's going to roll. And South Carolina's offensive line is not ready for that Georgia defense.
Yeah, I got Georgia with a clear cover against the Chickens this weekend too. Kansas State -4 at Mizzou. That's a noon kick in Columbia, Missouri.
Kansas State against the Missouri Tigers. This is an interesting game because Kansas State's ranked 15th, but they haven't been like dominant in their 2 games, right? I mean, they've just kind of been there, kind of thing, gone playing through the motions of the first 2 games. Haven't been as dominant. I'm with you. I think this is an interesting game. I'm glad you picked it. 4-point spread. I'm going to take Kansas State to cover, though. So give me Kansas State minus the 4.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to follow the general rule of betting on sports lines that if a home team is less than a touchdown underdog, you take them. So I'm taking Mizzou.
Man, with 4 points, though? That's a weird number, man.
It is a weird number, but they're at home. It's less than a touchdown. I'm going to take Mizzou on that one. I may end up seriously regretting that by the end of the weekend, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right, go ahead. What else you got?
Minnesota +7.5 at North Carolina, 3:30 kick in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, Tar Heels are 7.5-point favorite. This could be an interesting game. I think North Carolina.
It's a weird one.
Because Minnesota coming to North Carolina, I remember when I saw it the other day, I was like, what is this game? This is weird. Is this right?
This is ACC Big Ten Challenge. What are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly, right? So I'm with you on this. I think it's kind of a weird game. At first, earlier in the week, I was kind of high on North Carolina covering this, but the more I get toward the game and I know how Minnesota likes to run the football and control the line of scrimmage and control time of possession, I think North Carolina can win this game and will win this game, but that 7.5 is a big number. So I'm going to go give me Minnesota plus the 7.5.
Yeah, this one's weird. I picked some weird games this week. I mean, there are weird games this week. Let's be honest. There's not a lot of marquee matchups on the schedule this weekend in college football. I'm thinking the same thing kind of about North Carolina's defense. I was impressed in week 1. I was not impressed last week. But I'm going to say North Carolina covers at home with the 7.5. I'm big on the home teams this week, it seems. Well, maybe we'll see at this next one, but so far big on the home teams.
Yeah, I meant to say give me Minnesota minus the 7.5, not plus the 7.5. Plus we go to North Carolina. So give me that. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I'm interested to watch this one. That one's going to be fun. Unfortunately, though, I'll get to only watch the first half because you got to get to work.
I'm sure Cameron or somebody will be updating you on the score as it's going. I mean,
Oh,
somebody's got to do that job now that I'm not there anymore.
Yeah, well, we do. The out of town scoreboard is mentioned a lot. So,
all right. Next, we got Tennessee -6 at Florida. 7 p.m. kick in the Swamp. Rivalry game. Huge game for Billy Napier at Florida.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that Florida is going to give Tennessee fits.
I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
I
know
really
Tennessee hasn't played all that well the first 2 weeks, and they're not making big plays because actually Clemson, believe it or not, Clemson and who else did I see? Somebody who wasn't known for explosive plays last year either. Trying to remember. But Clemson's like ahead of Tennessee in explosive plays this year.
Which you wouldn't have thought with Joe Milton at quarterback and the ability he has to sling the ball. You wouldn't have thought that to be the case.
Exactly. So they have struggled a little bit. But man, I watched Florida. They're awful, dude. They're awful. They're an awful football team. They're not very good. They're not disciplined. I like Tennessee to go down there and win. Give me Tennessee -6.5. I think they cover.
Yeah, I've got Tennessee to cover too. I know this has been a popular one this week in the sports media world to pick Florida.
-6.
I mean, a lot of people picking Florida straight up, man. I just don't understand.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't get it. I know the Swamp stuff plays to play and all, but they're not a good football team. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I watched them against Utah. And by the way, if you watch Utah-Baylor, Utah's kind of questionable.
Yeah, I mean, Utah's on like their third quarterback in that game at Florida. And or against Florida. And
they physically dominated Florida.
Yeah, so that one's weird. Another weird game, but a rivalry game again, and very important for people who live in the area. Pitt is a 2.5-point dog at West Virginia. That's a 7:30 kickoff in the Backyard Brawl.
Interesting. So 7:30, the Backyard Brawl. Pitt, you said, is a 2-point underdog in this game?
They are a 2.5-point underdog.
2.5-point underdog. Going to be on ABC. This would be, man, if I wasn't working the Clemson game, this would be fun to watch, to be honest with you. Look, I know Pitt didn't look good last week. Just going to call it like it is. They did not look good. They struggled against Cincinnati to run the football, which was surprising. But Cincinnati's been a good team for the last several years. So let's not act like Cincinnati. I know they lost their head coach to Wisconsin and stuff, but let's not act like they're not still good. They are. It's a good football team. I think they're better than West Virginia. And I don't think people are giving Cincinnati enough credit for what they did to Pitt, because I think Pitt's still a pretty good football team, and I think Pitt will prove it this week. So I'm going to say give me the Panthers plus the 2.5 to win straight up.
Yeah, I agree with you. Pitt to win straight up. This is, if for anything, for my own pride, for all of the good things that I said about the Panthers
Same here.
in the preseason. I need Pitt to step up. I need Narduzzi to
make
the boys
us look
going.
good, Narduzzi. We were boasting you up, man, and you're going and losing to Cincinnati. Come on, you're better than that.
So we're in agreement there too. And then the last one, another weird matchup. BYU at Arkansas. Arkansas is an 8-point favorite, a 7:30 kickoff down there.
Going over to the SEC. I like how you're kind of keeping the SEC, ACC in there, mixing these up, Alex. Let's see. BYU, I just talked about what a good team they are. Just talked about that. They could be a pain in the side for Texas. They're a physical football team, well coached, as you said. 8-point dog on the road, coming into a different time zone. I'm going to say that line is too high. I think BYU is better than that. I'm going to go ahead and give me BYU minus plus the 8 points.
Yeah, I think that people maybe are – I mean, in week one, BYU, they only beat Sam Houston 14-0 to open the season. And I think that's probably carrying a lot of weight in people's minds going into this week. But I'm with you, too. I think BYU is a good football team. I mean, I think Arkansas is well coached, and they have some good players on the team. But I've got BYU to cover that – or to cover. To cover, yeah.
Yeah,
BYU.
yeah. Well, I think Arkansas wins the game still, but – I think BYU can cover. That 8 just seems a little high to me.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Will, another great week. We don't need guests. We just did an hour and 19 minutes on our own.
That's what we do, dude. We talk and run our mouths. That's why we're off the cuff.
I mean,
We
I
went
know
off the
most of
cuff
you,
one time.
most of you probably didn't make it this far to hear me and Will still talking, but if you did, we appreciate it. Send us a message. If
Yeah,
you listen
please.
to this, send us a message and let us know that you did. But we appreciate you for taking this journey with us off the cuff. We're going to be back next week. We're in a flow now. We've got a rhythm going. It seems like the schedule's working out for us. We want to be back live again next week to talk about the biggest game of the year for Clemson so far as they host Florida State. But first, Clemson, Florida Atlantic this weekend. We got a lot of weird games in college football this weekend that you should tune into.
Kind of a weird week. And, when you have these weird games, this is when college football has those weird games, if you know what I mean. Games that we didn't think somebody could win, and they win. So maybe we are going to be wrong about Florida, Tennessee. Maybe Arkansas, BYU is like we think is going to be tighter, So
maybe BYU goes out and wins it.
Maybe so, and then all of a sudden you're talking, oh man, BYU could go to Texas and win, right? Now it's even more of it's even bigger game. So, hey, who knows, man? That's what college football is so fun. That's why we love it. It's awesome. We need to talk to NFL on here. We need to do that at some point, by the way. I know both our teams suck. I know both our teams
Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl. Texas is going to win the national championship.
Don't say that. Do not say the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl. Please do not say that to me.
The Panthers are going to go 0-17. I mean, there's
the Steelers might be right with them.
Steelers and Panthers battling for the number one pick in 2024. You heard it here first. But thanks everybody for tuning in. For Will Vandervoort, I'm Alex Dodd. Subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow the Twitter, follow the Instagram, follow us on Spotify, do all the things. Subscribe. We appreciate you joining us. For Will Vandervoort, I'm Alex Dodd. See you later.
Thanks, guys.